Welcome back, Francois. I don't know what we keep doing to get you back here every single time, but
It's probably because we're having fun.
you keep agreeing. Of course, we're grateful, so I'm not complaining in any stretch of the imagination. I have an interesting topic for you today, one that I know is quite close to your heart. Accountability in the workplace.
Oh, that close. Okay, I understand.
Yeah. So now, of course, there's quite a few different directions we can go with this. And I think we could chew up quite a few hours just discussing this topic. But I think if we can try to keep it brief, high level, I think that would be really good. Now, I'm going to draw on your experience as a leader in this particular topic, simply because I know it's something you've been trying to drive in the organization. And we've also seen other organizations try to do the same thing with varying degrees of success. So I think a good place to start is, how, as a leader, do you define accountability in the workplace?
Okay, so I think it's important that we just agree on a definition, because of course there's possibly a lot of definitions. And I think the confusion is often the understanding of the difference between accountability and responsibility.
Yes.
So responsibility is very often a team thing. We're responsible for stuff, whereas accountability brings far more of a measurable element to it. So an activity or responsibility is wider, softer almost, whereas accountability gets a little bit, it has a bit of an edge to it. Okay, so the purpose of that edge is predominantly to become better. So the accountability is aimed at saying, how well did you do against a predefined, very clear, expected outcome? So not an activity that you did, but an outcome that you had to achieve. And then how well did you do in terms of achieving that? And if you did not achieve quite what was expected, then to have a feedback loop, an opportunity to grow and become better. So that's the absolute thing. Otherwise, it's very vague. The discussions around improvement becomes very soft. So it's my responsibility, but accountability says it stops with you.
Yeah.
It stops with you. It doesn't stop with the team. It stops with you. So for argument's sake, a sales manager, the team will be responsible for the achievement of it, but the manager is accountable, which means the manager has to sit down and face the music. And when it's achieved, there's clarity it is achieved, and then there's awards and accolades.
So it's invariably linked to consequence then?
There has to be a consequence here.
Either on the positive or the negative,
Absolutely.
of course.
Absolutely.
So it's interesting. I also understood there were also two types of accountability. So there's the outcome accountability and there's the process accountability. So the one talks about, and I'm referring to it in a work context. So there you have, if we talk outcome accountability, that's where the accountability is on the result that you produce. Whereas the process accountability is more, how did you get there? So it refers more to the process about that you go about, how did you make the decision? How did you operate versus what was achieved? So where do you think organizations need to apply accountability, on the outcome side or on the process side?
There's probably merit in applying it on both sides. But if I had to choose, I would apply it on the outcome side, because that's what accountability is. You are accountable for it, which invariably, responsibility could be at many people or many places, whereas accountability is invariably at one. So if we say we want you to follow a certain process, it's a little bit like a maths exam. We want to see how did you do in step 1, and step 2, and step 3, and step 4. And for each of those steps, you get a mark. If the final answer is wrong, it's okay. You only lose 1 point. Whereas in business, if you're accountable and you did not achieve that which you promised the shareholders, you're accountable. And there's absolute clarity, you did not achieve the result.
So would you say that deciding on those two is very much determined by the nature of the task or the job?
Maybe you can give me an example of what you're referring to.
So from what you're describing, it sounds to me, if we take certain roles, and of course we need to be careful how we define this, but assuming that some roles are simpler than others, okay, and some jobs are simpler than others, it would suggest that if the job or the role or the task that we're measuring in terms of accountability is fairly simple, perhaps measuring the process part of it is better. Whereas in complex tasks, measuring the outcome is more feasible. Simply being because if the job is easy, then the process is paramount. If the job is more difficult, the result is paramount. Because if it's complex and you focus too much on the process, but not the result, then you create this enormous amount of workload and burning rubber, but you don't really achieve anything. Where on the simple tasks, it's easy to switch and navigate, even if the process is being followed.
I'm of the opinion that it's way better to focus on the outcome, even on a simple task. So if you take a manufacturing environment where there's quite a simple task, but there's division of labor, so certain people would do certain tasks, then pass it on. And if you have accountability for the portion, very simple portion that you did, that you do your portion correct? Are you accountable for that? And then, so it's almost the concept that Deming brought in of saying there's quality checks as you go along to make certain the outcome at the end is exactly what you want to achieve. So I'm far more one for saying check on the outcome, because even if you followed the process, but the outcome was not what you achieved, you'll go back and say, why did I do it? What did I do? And why did I not achieve the result? So when you don't achieve it, you'll go back and do an analysis and get feedback on that to say, next time, what will we do differently? How will we approach the problem differently to get a better outcome? Otherwise, people have the freedom to say, I did my best.
Yeah, of course.
And I did my best, which is okay if you have responsibility. But if you have accountability, it means, I understand you did your best. And that's important. But what was the outcome?
You see, that to me ties very strongly into trust. So if we assume that organizations are solely responsible for driving accountability rather than fostering that as an internal thing that develops in people, then that makes sense to me, because then you work off a basis that if I create the space, people will take advantage. But if I work off the understanding that people invariably and genuinely just want to do well, and if you give them the autonomy and the space and just measure a certain thing, then they will surprise you and they will do their best. But of course, it's difficult to gauge, because you might have a team where half are sitting on one side of that spectrum and the other half on the other side of the spectrum.
More likely than not.
Exactly. So what do you do to have multiple standards, which doesn't work? So for me, it then begs the question, how do you measure this? How do you measure somebody's level of accountability?
Okay, so I think it's you start off by having absolute clarity of what the expected outcome is. So you set a goal. You clarify it. And I think SMART is a good acronym for setting your objectives, which means there's no ambiguity of what must be achieved, what it will look like, what it will not look like, and by when it will be achieved.
So you're referring to measuring the outcome?
Absolutely, not the process. Yeah.
So if you do that, to what extent do you think there's merit in then giving people autonomy in how they get there?
Okay, so again, it depends on the influence of the task on the rest of the stuff. But in main, people should have the authority to even do it the way they want to do it. Of course, you have to then consider the right amount of resources. So saying, well, I'm outsourcing it, I double the value of it is maybe not a good way of handling.
You know, it's interesting you say that. So, of course, there's the cost implications. So I saw a case study. You're familiar with the hospitality group Ritz-Carlton. So you know that globally they're renowned for their quality standards and for their level of luxury and their level of customer service. They're consistently ranked in the top. Even when other luxury brands have fluctuated, they have consistently been there. And interestingly, the reason that is, they accredit it to their culture. And the culture is based very much on singular accountability right down at customer-facing level. So there was a management decision made that says those that serve customers, whether it be in the front desk, whether it be the concierge, whether it be the people delivering the bags, whatever the case may be, they have autonomy in how they serve the customer best. Right up to the point where they can make a decision up to $2,000 in the US. So if a customer asks for anything, get me a limo, get whatever, as long as it's not more than $2,000, they can make the decision whether you're a busboy or whether you're the receptionist instantaneously without having to check with management. So, which means that people now have this thing, yes, sure, I can do that for you. Yes, sure, I can do that for you. And there's instant action related to that. And that, of course, comes with risks. But the result has been they've maintained this extremely high standard.
A very good example that I think to use. There's the example of a hotel clerk that organized a chopper, a helicopter, to drop somebody off when it was snowing. And he got accolades for taking the responsibility. In some other companies, he probably would have been unemployed afterwards.
Yeah, exactly.
So fostering a culture, and it's very much a culture thing. So if you have accountability, and if you don't have it, you just bring accountability in. It feels like a stick. It feels like a set of rules. It feels like this is very threatening. So you need to bring it in slowly and say, great, if you don't have it. Okay, so wherever you are, whether you're 30, 40, 50, 100% on it, so you have to just think, how am I going to bring it up and raise the level? So you have to start by saying, we anticipate you're going to make mistakes. But we also anticipate that you won't repeat the mistakes.
Yes.
Okay, so you'll make the mistake, which is just quite simply, we've identified a development area. Let's celebrate that. Then we'll give you feedback and we'll train you. And the next time we expect a different outcome. Okay, so then it's absolutely wonderful. So if people have the confidence that I can admit when things go wrong. There's the saying, let bad news travel fast when things go wrong, so people then are aware of it and they have time to fix it. So if you have that, but you can't use it to say, well, we understand you had a difficult day. When we understand tomorrow you again had a difficult day, because then it's not accountability. So you have to have accountability. You have to have the feedback. Otherwise, people, if they don't achieve it, they don't know what they have to do differently. So then you have to train them.
So that clarity is needed.
It's very needed. But then they have to perform at a higher standard. All right. So if you're not there, we'll train you to get to where you're supposed to be. And if the bar is raised, which it often is because targets are higher, etc., then the training has to be given and the support to get you at the higher level. But then if you don't achieve it, you have a problem. If you achieve it, there's consequences. There's consequences that you get recognized.
But now, of course, that has to be consistent.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, people get the sense that this is a fad. This is...
Yeah, and it's fascinating that a lot of organizations, consequences are driven far more, or accountability is far more driven at the lower levels. But if the executive doesn't do the bit, you would have seen, in some of organizations that you've seen, a salesperson will be on time. But if the CEO pitches late, well, no, that's okay.
No, it's different now.
It's different because the CEO is important.
So, which means then everything that's related to accountability is now enforced. And because there's that those double standards, I don't buy into it, which means everything is done begrudgingly.
Yes.
And eventually that leads to a high turnover.
It leads to a high turnover.
And a negative environment.
And then you have to police everything. So now you have to police everything and it becomes almost punitive. And that's not the intention. The intention is, if you're capable and you're motivated and you're delivering, of course, it doesn't mean you can relax. It means you have to be focused. Then you achieve what you're supposed to achieve, and then there are accolades and there's recognition. On the other side, if you don't achieve, you get feedback, you get trained, you don't achieve, then accountability suggests you're at the wrong place. And then there's the consequences that comes into it.
So what role does competence play in that?
Very big role. a very big role.
Because I would imagine if you in placing these levels of accountability based on outcomes, my level of comfort with achieving that would be based on my perception of my own competence. So, for example, if you ask me to do a job that I'm not convinced I can do, and the standard you've set is extremely high by my standards or by my own perception of my abilities, then it goes from accountability to I better do it, but I can't do it, which means now I'm associating a negative emotion with it. There's a lot of doubt, there's a lot of resentment, there's a lot of uncertainty. And then, as you said, it then becomes punitive, even if it's introduced in a nice way and slowly in the right way. But if people don't believe they can do that which you are asking of them to do, it's not going to achieve the desired result, which means if we're going to measure accountability at an outcome-based level, you've got to be sure that people can achieve that.
You want to be sure. So you want to get them to be sure that you're sure. So you'll prepare them. But invariably, take any sport, any skills, the people believe they can win the boxing fight. Okay. But when they go there, they lose. Not all of them, but they lose some. They believe the football game. We believe in ourselves, we can do it. And then they lose. Which is, in essence, they did not achieve it. So accountability says, I was responsible for it. It's not the weather or the coach or somebody. Accountability implies no excuses. Because those two just don't go together. Excuses or explanations, as some people call them, and not having accountability. So accountability says, if I'm given a task and I am not capable of doing it, that I would say, I'm not confident, can I try? Help me develop it. Give it to me in chunks. Let me master it.
Now, would that be the responsibility of the employee to bring that to the fore?
Absolutely. So again, if I have accountability that I have to perform. It's not the boss. Well, the boss said I must do it. No, you're responsible for it. You're accountable for it. That means my sense of accountability is such that if I am uncertain, I'm going to raise it. Now, of course, if I keep on raising, I can't do the job, and that's why you're employed for, then you have a bit of a problem.
Oh, absolutely. But then it's a recruitment problem, because then why recruit somebody that can't do the job? So there has to be a level of confidence in management or in leadership that I'm not going to give you a task that I don't think you can do. Somewhere you've demonstrated you have the ability to do this. Now, of course, that's assuming that which you're asking him to do is above and beyond what they originally hired to do, etc. So if you're hired to do a simple task and you've already demonstrated you can do that task, and all I'm asking is that you do that task consistently in regular intervals, that's not unrealistic. So I would imagine there's degrees.
Yeah. So you mentioned, and the question was, to what extent does it relate to competence? I think there's a couple of other areas of competence that we have to consider. So the starting point is, do I understand the concept of accountability? Because a lot of people do not understand it. You would have seen that in training, where you discuss the concept and people nod and they verbalize, I understand. I understand I'm accountable. The moment they don't deliver and they carry the consequences, you know what we see. It's like people get upset.
Yeah, okay, but I didn't realize that's what you meant, or I didn't think you were serious, or et cetera, et cetera.
So the start of accountability is the competence of understanding what the concept means. It means that if you speed and there's a traffic policeman that stops you, you are accountable for driving within the speed limit. The consequences, you'll get a fine.
Okay, so can I push some buttons? So let's assume that we do that. And I understand the concept of accountability to such an extent that I know that if I screw this up, that's going to be the consequence. And I say to you, I'm not prepared to do that. I don't want to do that. For whatever the reason is. I don't believe I can. It makes me uncomfortable. I'm lazy, whatever the case may be. What does a leader do?
Okay, so of course the circumstances
contextual
influences it, but
yeah.
the issue is if there's somebody So that goes. So there are two scenarios, I think. The one is where you have a culture of accountability, and you don't have a culture. So let's assume you have a culture of accountability. That's the organization's culture, and I'm there, and you give me a job, and I say, okay, I'm not going to do the job. Then, if it's on the job spec, you look at the HR process of saying, well, what were you employed for, and should it be, no, etc. If it's a new job and the person says, I really don't want to be promoted to Kazakhstan and become a senior executive there, I'd like to rather stay here. Then it's a choice that they have within the system. And then they have accountability by raising that I can't do it. If it's insubordination, that's dodging the accountability one. Okay, so understanding what the concept means and understanding how it will be measured and how it will be implemented is, as a competence, very important. So people have to understand that. And it's almost like the exercise of picking up a cup and say, okay, you're accountable for holding. If you don't hold it and just open your hand, the outcome, the consequences are going to be, it's going to break. And then you have to replace that. So that's the personal sacrifice, the personal consequence to you. Because if the consequence lands on somebody else, I make a mistake,
that's not accountable,
and my boss has to pay their school fees all the time. That's just dodging the accountability. The consequence is part of it. So I have to understand it. And then I have to understand that if I go wrong, this is the process to help me become better. And I have to understand it's here to help us as an organization become better. It's here to help you as a person become better. But as an organization, we cannot have things where people don't deliver what they're supposed to be. And if you're responsible for delivering X, Y, Z, and you're accountable for that, it means if you don't achieve it, then you don't achieve what you were employed to do. And if you consistently do that, and if the interventions of development, etc., does not get the right results, then I'm of the opinion you're probably not in the right space of where you should be. Your natural talents are possibly not applied, or you may say being promoted into incompetence. I think they refer to it as something like that.
So I'm thinking now that talks a lot to the nature of the relationship between an employee and an employer, which I think has changed quite significantly over time. Now, if that's a healthy relationship, it should be quite easy to foster a culture of accountability. You would almost invariably see in really healthy relationships in that sense, probably the employees foster the accountability themselves innately through their own desire to want to serve, want to be part of it, want to earn my right. But where that relationship is unhealthy or not clearly defined or inconsistent, and now accountability becomes, as you say, the punitive measure that I'm trying to enforce it where it doesn't already exist. So in an ideal world, it would be great if you could create a culture where the environment is such that people choose to be accountable because I want to be here. And if I want to be here, I need to fit in with that. And that's for me the best choice. So they make it themselves, and it's not something you have to enforce or even manage. It just happens organically.
Yes.
But of course, I imagine that's very rare.
I think what also makes it very difficult are the different generations, the millenniums, the Z, etc. It makes it very difficult for them to understand the baby boomers and the baby boomers to understand it and try and get that. But it is achievable. It is achievable. It does not always look the same, but the concept of accountability is the same. Take the working from home. I want to work from home. Now, what a lot of people do, the bosses just start measuring more and more and more. So you start having a relationship based on a dashboard, and in many cases, it's a dashboard of activities, not a dashboard of outcomes. Because very often it's very difficult to measure the outcomes, not all positions. So it becomes a position that's great for employees, but not good for the bosses. Okay. So if people understand that concept and it's explained and it's applied consistently, some people will not like it. but then they're probably in the wrong cultural environment.
Yeah.
Okay. You see, so the question is, do I really want it? Because invariably, having a culture of accountability takes more leadership. It takes more energy. It just it's
An
it's harder
immense
work.
amount.
Yeah, it's harder work to get that, but you get a better outcome. So there are direct links. The reports show as much as top level accountability at very successful organizations. Yeah, it shows that every 10% or so drop in accountability by the seniors influences the results for the organization from top achiever to middle to average to below average, just very quickly.
I can buy that. I mean, I saw a poll from Gallup, which scared the living daylights out of me. So they did a research poll globally, and it indicated that there was a direct link between employees' engagement levels and their sense of accountability. So the more I am engaged with the job that I do and the company that I work for, the more I am accountable. Yet when they measured the level of engagement across the globe, it was only 21%. 21% of people employed are engaged in their job. Now, interestingly enough,
Yes, that's not a lot, eh?
if
That's
they would
not-
just all of a sudden switch from not being engaged to being engaged, it would increase the global GDP by 9%, almost something like $9 trillion US, just from people saying, I'm here or I'm not here.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think if managers and leaders can bridge that gap of saying, I just want more accountability. Okay. So, of course, the level of consequences can be quite punitive, can be quite severe. You miss one deadline or one accountability thing you miss and you're gone, or you get a final written warning. Then it creates a culture. But if you don't have it, then why would I perform more if I prefer to be relaxed in my work space and do some of my private stuff in between? Why would I work harder if there are no consequences, if there are no accountability, positive or negative? Some individuals.
So there has to be some motivation.
There has to be some motivation.
Yeah, and some people find that intrinsically in themselves or for their own personal reasons, or some of them, it gets created for them.
And the beauty is that there are people who are just, a lot of people who are just naturally driven and they want to achieve, they want to do good, they want to be good people. But you can't have a company with just those people because the whole population doesn't look like that. It's difficult to find them and pick them.
And also because very toxic, because everyone's trying to climb on top of each other and to the top.
Yes.
So it's far too competitive internally, I would imagine. So I imagine balance plays a role. So how would you advise a leader decides to apply consequences? And what I'm trying to establish is, you mentioned that consequences can have degrees of severity and or intensity. How do you decide what level to go in with in terms of consequences when you're trying to instill? So let's contextualize. You don't have a high level of accountability. You're trying to build one. So how do you decide what level of consequences to go with?
So I think you have to think about, be aware of what is your situation. Do I have 5 years to change it? Because a lot of change programs take 5 years. If I'm in a situation that I have to turn this around, I spoke to a bank in Central Africa last week. They have to turn the business around. When we spoke about the issue of the understanding of accountability, you could see it was fairly foreign. And when we spoke about consequences, it was something that they were contemplating of maybe doing. Okay. But they were in severe financial and not in a good situation. So then you don't have 5 years to turn it around. So then it's a case of send the message, send it across, be an advocate, get other, you've good old change program, but you just make it, you put it in fast forward and you move it. And of course, there will be casualties. Yeah. And sometimes those casualties will be good for the people because you used to be like this and now you're adapting a different personality, a different culture. And I might love it, I might not love it. And if you don't love it, then if that's what is necessary, it's like somebody saying, the boat is sinking, there's a life raft. I don't like life rafts. Okay, then you can choose to swim. But it's a choice that those people are then given. Go with this or decide to go somewhere else. And if you don't see it as it's negative, that those people are negative towards you, it's changing and they don't like it. It's okay. We understand it's okay. Then just get other people who like it. When I do well, I get recognized. When I achieve what I'm supposed to do, I get an award. I get invited to the conference. I'm part of the overseas incentive, whatever the case is. And those people are inspired by those sort of achievements. But also on the negative side, it's got to be there. We have seen in a couple of clients we worked with, no accountability, no consequences, no growth.
Yeah.
Because it becomes optional whether I want to participate. It's like in rugby terms or in soccer terms. I want you guys to be fit. Yeah, I'll think about it and come back to you.
Yeah. So almost doing the job to even a minimum standard becomes voluntary.
Yeah, or even a good standard. But invariably the competition is tough out there. The business is tough. So you need to be in a really good state of fitness and eagerness and drive and commitment to it. And if you're not there and people don't really want to get there, you're not going to change. Look at a middle manager. So middle managers responsible for implementing strategies. So if the strategy changes, the middle manager is responsible that the team below him or her changes. And if they feel, well, this is really tough and this is tough on people, I'm not going to push it that hard. Then it's not going to happen. So you have a good strategy that doesn't happen. And it's because the middle manager does not feel I'm accountable for it. They might send the message on. The seniors say we now have to do this.
Due to pressure from management.
Yeah, due to pressure from management. It's like you're almost a bystander. And that comes really back to the essence of it. Some people feel they're bystanders in a situation.
Or just conduits for communication.
That's kind of like, you mean you're an ADSL or a fiber line or something like that. Exactly. That's all you are. Yeah. But you're right. So they don't really grasp it, that they are accountable, that they are responsible. They have to deliver the stuff. And you can foster that. You can foster it with small little things. We've seen companies where the discipline was quite laid back and people were very relaxed in their daily doing and in the attendance of meetings and the meeting of internal deadlines and the meeting of their sales targets. They were quite relaxed, which meant they got quite a relaxed result. And then the market value went quite down and they got bought out. And then somebody new comes in and says, it's a good company, it's a good product, it's good people. We just have to change the culture. And they changed the culture, and all of a sudden, then one example that you know of, a capital value of 35 million, a business value, went to in excess of 600 million in 3 years. And the only thing that changed was the culture. Yeah. The culture of accountability.
There's so many examples of that. I mean, you know how Netflix grew to success in such a short space of time in what was quite a volatile, uncertain, and brand new market space. So they fundamentally changed the way that people absorbed entertainment. And the fact that they grew so aggressively was apparently down to the fact that they had a very simple approach when it came to management. They said the accountability that we're speaking about is, as you say, it's at a result level. So leaders at board level would say, this is where we want the company to be, this is what we want the company to achieve in this time frame. Then they would pass that strategy or that high level objective down to one layer lower. And they would say, that's what we want to achieve. You decide how we get there. And then they would then strategize and then create these little micro strategies that they'll filter down. But all the way down, it was total autonomy on how they get there. As long as we get to this point, we don't care how you do it. Except that they also had one other element to it, which is if if whatever you define you need to do to get there, if you don't achieve it, goodbye. No second chances, no nothing, just goodbye.
You see, that's
So-
not really.
So you so you can decide how you get there, but once you've made that decision, if you don't do that, goodbye. So it's the autonomy, but with such a high level of accountability that there are no second chances, and that drove them to the success that they achieved. Because it's assuming I don't have all the answers, so I have to trust the people underneath me. That if I just hold them accountable by one standard, that the rest they'll figure out. But it's a level of trust, but also with some risk mitigation through.
Yeah. So
Some
you
severe
remember our discussion earlier about
consequences.
if I don't make it, what happens? If the consequences, goodbye, then becomes greatly driven by fear, and then it becomes achievement at all other cost almost. So if you have a culture of saying that's what you have to achieve, if you don't achieve it, let's close the gap. Let's do reflection. Let's close the gap with training. If you then don't get it, then okay, we
Okay,
understand.
so that's a balance in between.
It's a balance in between, because the other one becomes absolutely ruthless, because you almost feel like if I'm sick, I'm going to miss my month's target and I'm going to be fired. Which, I don't want to say it's Jack Welch's type of approach, but that approach, and of course you've got to balance this with the labor law. So getting that past labor law in South Africa is not necessarily going to be possible. It will take a longer process, which I think is fair, to have more patience and more understanding with people. But don't take it away. You still have to have it. You have to have accountability, which means you have to achieve, and if you don't get there, there are consequences.
Okay, so if we had to summarize, what are we saying? So your understanding of, or at least your experience with accountability, is that it's absolutely critical to the success of a business.
Sorry to interrupt you. I just had a thought. Companies that have large employee bases, invariably they spend some money on disciplinary hearings, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just wondering, if they spend half the amount of energy that they spend on disciplinary hearings on giving people who are accountable, who do achieve, giving them that time and accolades and recognition, I wonder what would happen.
You'd probably see a totally different outcome.
Yeah, because we're good at giving heightings, if I may call it that. But are we good at having the celebrations? Not just the email, well done, but proper celebrations. Because that for the positive person, that breeds it. You spoke about the ownership of being part of the business. Yeah, you give me an award and you put me in a race, and I buy into this race of not competing in a negative way, but competing for a good outcome. Now I'm all of a sudden more engaged.
And then I'll find my own motivation, and I'll find my own reasons and ways to achieve more and more and more. That doesn't have to be driven by management, which is less taxing, which means managers can focus more on the future and the vision and the strategy, rather than just trying to manage the individual cogs in the wheel.
So if I may throw a question to you, no accountability, no consequences. Think of some of your customers. Mm-hmm. Okay, none of them are there, but if they had that, and where they are now with a good level of accountability and responsibility and consequences, what's the difference in business outcome as a percentage?
Oh, immense. 300%.
Yeah, it's huge.
And that's probably selling a little bit short.
Yeah. It's absolutely huge. So is it a nice to have?
No, it's not, because we're in the absence of accountability at all levels. What we have seen is invariably that accountability has to sit somewhere. No business operates in a vacuum of accountability. So if it's not at the lower levels, invariably it sits with one man, the CEO, which means everything pivots on that one person. And then you burn through CEOs quite quickly. Because the shareholders are pushing this way, the employees expect their needs to be met this way, and the only person having any accountability is this single pivot. And then when you rest billions of rands worth of revenue and thousands of jobs on one person like that, and one level of accountability, it's almost never sustainable and or successful. So totally buy the argumentation. Accountability throughout the organization, not just at one level.
Yeah, and you know, we can look at people who train. They will train you on financial skills for non-financial managers. They'll train you on presentation skills. They'll train you on planning. But how many train on accountability with the understanding that it's a behavior, it's a personality approach that you have to consider and reflect on that and then decide to go that route or not go that route. And some people struggle with it.
Absolutely. So I know of a lot of organizations that do accountability training. The challenge is, if you look at the content and the nature of that training, for lack of a more eloquent way of saying it, it's very fluffy-wuffy. So a lot of that training is about how you create this culture or foster this culture of accountability inside you by balancing out all the different aspects of your life. And it gives you these highly complex, multi-tiered psychological approaches and mechanisms to try and create accountability intrinsically in each individual. Now, as we've discussed, in an ideal world, you want people to choose to be accountable themselves. And if that's what it takes, sure. Unfortunately, a lot of these companies do that training, but their time frame to adopt that level of accountability is not as long as 5-10 years. So I don't think there's a lot of practical short to medium solutions from a training perspective that overcomes that gap, that says, look, this is what accountability means. This is how it's measured. This is how it's applied. This is how it's maintained and sustained.
And I think if you want to change an organization, you can train them all on planning. You can train them on presentations. You can train them on teamwork. But this is an individual issue.
Yep. And it's a highly practical issue. So,
absolutely.
I would imagine it's very little theory and very much conversation and practical application and buy-in.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So there would be a lot more merit for a lot of organizations if they scrapped their training on all the other stuff and just trained on accountability.
They might even see results.
Indeed. Okay, so let's summarize. Accountability is critical to any organization's success. And it cannot be at one level, it has to be at multiple levels. You can apply accountability in multiple ways, but there is some consideration that has to be given to the context of why and how you're applying accountability, whether it's into an environment where accountability already exists or whether you're starting from scratch. And it has to be linked to some consequences, both on the positive but also the negative, where when it is achieved, it is celebrated in equal measure. If it's not achieved, it is addressed. And that has to be consistent in the organization throughout at all levels, including being applied by managers and leaders. And where that then happens, it has a significant effect on the outcome of a business.
Yes.
And what they can achieve and how fast they grow.
Absolutely.
And can often be the differentiating factor in highly competitive environments.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you.
Thank you.
As always.
Yeah.
Great chatting
Love
to you.
this topic.
I thought you might like it. Yeah. So any last comments for a business leader looking to apply accountability in their organization? One sentence.
My quote, Nike. Just
Sure.
do it.
Great one. See you later.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.